Have you got a sporty new bike or an old one you're ready to upgrade? Are you wondering what upgrades and mods you can add to help get the most performance out of it? In this video, I'm going to share 4.5 upgrades that will help you improve your performance on the street and at the track. Besides just upgrading your bike, it's also important to take care of yourself. At Tularosa Moto, you'll find a range of moto gear that will keep you feeling good while staying safer in the process. I ride with the gear we make. I'm not cutting any corners with my comfort and safety, and I don't expect you to either. So check us out at tularosamoto.com. All right, before we get started, let's talk about what it means to go fast. When most people talk about speed, they mean one thing: accelerating the bike in a straight line. Just twist the throttle and watch the world become a blur. The only thing that matters here is power. More power equals more speed. Simple. But what happens when you're in the canyons or on the track? You come to a curve and now you have to slow the bike, point the bike, get it to track through the corner, then quickly accelerate to get the bike up to speed. Power doesn't matter at all when you're slowing and leaning the bike through a corner. Once you're twisting the throttle at corner exit, all the extra power in the world won't help you if you or your bike can't handle what it's already got. The point I'm getting at is that yes, some of the mods I'll suggest will help you live out your fantasies of breaking the sound barrier, but they'll also help you carry that speed when the road or the track decides that you need to quickly slow and lean your bike. When it comes to overall performance, braking and turning is every bit as important as fast acceleration. If you want to be a faster and safer rider, always keep that in mind. So, with that out of the way, let's dig into my list of best performance mods for your sporty wheels. First, let's start with the low-hanging fruit: your bike's intake and exhaust. Your engine is basically an air pump that puts out power. The more air your engine can suck in and push out, the more power it can produce. The problem is that most bikes have heavily restricted intakes and exhausts because manufacturers hate it when bikers have fun.
No more fun of any kind!
Okay, the problem here isn't manufacturers, but actually smog laws in states and countries that require makers to tame down their bikes unless they're at the racetrack. We are going to the racetrack, right? Anyhow, the solution to opening up your restricted airflow involves 4 steps. First, replace the bike's stock intake with a performance intake/filter from an aftermarket manufacturer like Trask, BMC, or S&S. An aftermarket intake will allow more air into the bike, which the bike can then use to create more power. Next, you'll want to eliminate the pipe with the bike's catalytic converter. This does 2 things. It lets more airflow out of the engine, which of course creates more power. It also gets rid of 15 to 20 pounds of weight. Dumping the catalytic converter is the biggest weight savings you can do for your bike. And weight matters. The rough rule of thumb is that every drop of 7 pounds in weight from the bike is equivalent to an increase of 1 horsepower. The weight savings alone here can give you the effect of an extra 3 horsepower bump. Not a bad deal. The final impediment of air through your bike is the muffler. Most stock mufflers are restricted for both sound and air. Exchange the heavy muffler for an aftermarket exhaust and you lose more weight. A nice bonus, and open your engine up to more airflow. The downside to many aftermarket exhaust tips is that they're often quite loud. The more you open your muffler, the more sound you can expect. There's no free lunches here. The upside is that once you open your bike's intake and exhaust, you'll have more air running through your engine like it's a tornado in a particle accelerator. To tie all of your mods together, you'll need to tune the electronic control unit of your bike, also known as the ECU, so that it properly adjusts the amount of fuel being delivered to the engine to match the increased flow of air that you've now invited in. I'm going to do a complete video on just that, so stay tuned. In the meantime, know that if you don't update the ECU, the bike might run rough and you can ultimately damage the engine. No bueno. The bottom line is that a new exhaust and intake setup will net you a pickup of 5 to 10 horsepower once you've tuned the bike. That's not including any weight savings. Overall, it's the easiest way to bump up your power. Plus, there's nothing like the muscled roar of your bike's engine once it's set free. With that out of the way, let's get down to the business of riding. If you want to ride fast, your bike needs to accelerate fast and decelerate faster still. The link between the road and your bike is your suspension. Most riders don't think much about it, or if they do, they just think of it in terms of comfort. A stiff ride hurts and a soft ride feels good. What most riders don't realize is that a properly set suspension will allow you to accelerate faster, slow down faster, and hold your line through a corner much more precisely. If you listen to racers in the pit talking to their crew, so much of what they're discussing is how the suspension feels in and out of corners. For racers, suspension is often the key between a podium finish and a low side crash somewhere out on the tarmac. If your rear shock is too soft, the rear of your bike will squat and you'll lose speed while accelerating. If the front shock is too soft, you're fighting the tendency of the bike to go wide on corner exit. Too stiff a rear shock and you'll lose the rear during hard braking. Too stiff a front shock and the bike won't be able to turn in on corner entry. Believe it or not, a properly tuned suspension will translate to big performance gains whether you're on the road or on the track. The first step is to take your bike to a professional suspension tuner who can properly set your preload, compression, and rebound. A good suspension tuner is worth their weight in gold, so ask around to see who experienced rider in your area use. Getting your suspension tuned is also a great excuse to head to the racetrack, since there's usually a tuner on site who will inexpensively dial in your suspension. Hint, hint, time to go to the racetrack. The first thing a suspension expert will do is adjust your bike's preload. That's how much the bike sags downward when you sit on it. What they may find is that your shocks are either undersprung, too soft for your weight, or oversprung, which means the springs are too stiff for your weight and riding abilities. An undersprung shock is going to be too mushy and at risk of bottoming out. An oversprung shock will give you a bumpy ride and may keep the bike from staying in contact with the road. The solution is to have the springs in your shock replaced with a spring that has the proper spring rate for your body weight and riding ability. Springs are actually designed to only work within a fairly narrow range, so the odds are good that the stock spring wasn't designed for your weight. A new rear spring is in the $100 price range, not including labor to replace, so this isn't a terribly expensive fix. Given that a new Öhlins TTX shock, the standard for performance-oriented sport bikes, is $1,600, getting your spring rates properly set is a much more cost-effective solution. Finally, you'll want to consider the age of your bike and how many miles you have on it. If your bike is a few years old and over 10,000 miles, the oil in your forks and rear shock is done, finished. It's past its retirement age and it's not showing up for work anymore. You'll need to have the oil in both forks and rear shock replaced, along with the oil in the forks dampers. With fresh oil, your shocks will run with the pros. Speaking of pros, my next upgrade is one that every racer loves: a quick shifter for clutchless shifting. This is probably my favorite mod and one of two, more on that other one later, that makes the biggest difference in my performance. The quick shifter allows for fast, clutchless shifting. I can be wide open on the throttle and in the blink of an eye shift into a higher gear or quickly let off on the gas and shift down one gear after the other, all without ever working the clutch. My choice for an aftermarket quick shifter is the Translogic with Auto Blipper. The quick shifter will make it easier for you to take off like a rocket when accelerating from a stop. A quick bump and you're up in the gears. Some sport bikes, like the R1 or ZX6R, come stock with a quick shifter that allows for clutchless upshifting, but you still need the clutch to downshift, which sort of defeats the purpose in my mind. Clutchless downshifting really allows the rider to stay on the gas longer and carry more speed through the corner. The Translogic quick shifter comes with its own control unit that tells the engine to blip the throttle, which means rev it a little higher, so that too much engine speed won't lock up the rear wheel when downshifting. It's called an auto blipper, and it's magic for using engine compression to quickly slow the bike when heading into a corner. With lightning speed, you can downshift one or more gears. The quick shifter is one of those mods that's really a game changer for your riding. Like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, most riders are focused on fast acceleration. But the flip side to accelerating is decelerating. It's often a lot easier to make up lost ground by outbraking another rider than it is to outrun them. To do this, you need a healthy set of brakes. There's a couple of mods you can do here that will help you dive into corners like a Moto America racer. You can start by switching out your semi-metallic front brake pads for sintered pads. Sintered pads are made from a ceramic material designed to work better in the high heat conditions created by aggressive riding. They won't fade after a few laps at the track or a hot day in the canyons. Plus, they have a softer bite to them that delivers more feel to the rider. The next time you're swapping out tires, you can use this opportunity to pop a set on there. At under $50, they're a cheap upgrade that you'll definitely feel. One brake mod that I'd have a hard time living without are braided stainless steel brake lines. If your bike has rubber brake lines, you may find that your brakes tend to fade after you've been riding a while. The rubber lines begin to expand, which translates to less force being applied to the calipers and brake rotors. Stainless lines won't expand when your brakes get hot, which helps keep your braking consistent and firm no matter how aggressively you're riding. If you're planning to push hard on the brakes, stainless lines are the way to go. Before we leave the brakes, I've got one more mod, an upgraded master cylinder. This is a race-friendly upgrade that delivers more force from the caliper to the front brake with less effort. On my R6, I've got an Akasato master cylinder. With it, a little pressure goes a long way. If you see pro racers using one finger on the brakes, it's because they're using a master cylinder like this one. Though I'm still using stock brake calipers, overall the system delivers a ton of braking power. The bike will stop fast without being too grabby. Between the stainless steel brake lines, sintered pads, and upgraded master cylinder, the front brake is a big step up from stock. So that's all 4 of my upgrades. But wait, didn't I promise an extra half an upgrade? Yes, I did. But before I share it with you, I'm going to ask you to hit the subscribe button so that you can catch all of my Can't Live Without Moto videos as I post them. You're among the few, and hopefully the proud, who made it all the way to the end of this video. So I'd appreciate it if you could kick back a little love and hit that subscribe and notify button. Anyhow, this next one only ranks as half an upgrade because it's for the track only, not for the street. I'm talking about slicks for your wheels. I switched from aggressive track day tires to slicks, and I managed to knock 6 seconds off my lap time, just like that. That's a lot of speed. Slicks are special 100% carbon tires designed to stick like glue to the track surface. When I first tried them out, I couldn't believe how planted my bike felt. Truly confidence-inspiring. Slicks, however, do require specialized tire warmers to get them up to their working temperature. In case you might be tempted to ride them on the street, don't do it. Not only do they lack the tread of street tires, you'll actually find them to be less sticky since they're not designed to work in the range of tire temperatures that you can typically expect in off-track riding. That said, if you're doing lots of track days, they're a worthwhile switch. Well, that's it for my must-have performance upgrades. If you'd like to see all of the wallet-emptying upgrades that I did to my new Ducati Monster, check out the video below. As always, stay safe and enjoy the ride.